Hi, this is Amy from Good Food on Earth, and today I'm going to share with you the free thinking online course that's going to be for kids. It's going to be ages 11 and up, and this is basically an option for an immediate action that is available for kids to kind of help with what's going on right now, a resource for them to use. So let me just show you what this is all about. This is the free thinking online course. And basically I have there cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And the whole basis of this is that nobody is the teacher. We're all storytellers. None of us are superior or inferior. There will be no telling anyone what to think or how to think, and each kid is going to be their own guide. They'll guide themselves through our learning and discussions. So what's important here, we're going to take this quote from John Steinbeck, and this, I believe, that the free exploring mind of the individual human is the most valuable thing in the world. And this I would fight for, the freedom of the mind to take any direction it wishes undirected. And this I must fight against, any idea, religion, or government which limits or destroys the individual. This is what I am and what I am about. And this is what this course is focused on as well. Our credo is based on three principles: mutual respect, nonviolence, and open-minded skepticism. Mutual respect. This foundation is based off of what we all recognize and has been written about in documents on human rights, that all of us are, without distinction, we're all born free. We're all born equal in dignity, and we're all born equal in rights that stem from our freedom and dignity. All human beings, without distinction, are endowed with conscience and reason, and we should act towards each other in a spirit of fellowship. So we are born with the ability to reason and to have a conscience, and how our reasoning and conscience work for each of us is going to be different. It's going to be nuanced, it's going to be unique, and the mutual respect for that will be what we practice here. So in practice, in our sessions that we're going to hold, what this mutual respect will come through as is when we listen to each other openly. When one person is speaking, we listen openly with the intent to listen and not with the intent to reply. And if we find ourselves reacting to a word or a phrase, we actually let that go. We don't hold on to what's triggered us and triggered a response from us, but we let it go so that we can keep listening. And we detach from those words, and we look at the essence, what is really being communicated. We're not in the convincing game. We're not about proving who's right and who's wrong, because there's so much that can be missed when we do that approach. And when we speak and we give our own ideas, we stand in our sovereignty, which means that while we're watching these videos or listening to a guest speaker or having our conversations, each individual does not displace their own principal witness, which is themselves. So every time they're exposed to information, it's important to remember to reflect on oneself, look at how you are processing the data, how it's personally affecting you, and why that might be. Look at it curiously. And then you can have that ability, develop that ability if you don't already, to transform any data that you come across that goes through your personal filters into actionable knowledge that can manifest in your reality to make your experience better for you. And when we're learning, when we're taking in the information and when we're also conversing, we let go of expectations, which allows us to explore more and see what's out there. What is it? What are the different aspects of this piece of data? And the important thing to remember as well is that for each person participating, this is your life. So own it right now in this moment. Whatever is happening, you decide how you experience this. So you can enjoy it. You can laugh, you can love, you can explore, you can shift what's happening right in the moment, especially if it's something difficult. You can look at that with curiosity, and that actually separates you from the intensity so you can explore it and help yourself. So, our second principle is nonviolence. It's important. We're going to look at the distinction now between nonviolence, and then in the next slide, we're going to look at what's the difference between violence, power, and force. Okay. So, when we talk about violence, this is the intentional use of physical force or power, and it can also be a psychological as well, threatened or actual, against oneself. Say when you're very self-critical, when you're abusive to yourself in your thoughts and in your behavior and your actions, or to another person. And that usually happens if you do that to yourself already, or against a group or community. And this results in, or has a high likelihood of resulting in, injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. To violate is defined as to break or disregard, like violating a law. And what we're focusing most on is our first basis of mutual respect. So, respecting the inherent freedom, dignity, and fundamental rights of all human beings. So, we don't want to violate those. And when we're speaking and we have someone speaking as well, the practice of not interrupting and not disturbing, we're going to practice showing proper respect for whoever is speaking, um, and so on. So, violence can occur through ignorance as well as intent. And if it does come up, that's fine. We'll deal with it in the moment. It's not a huge issue. It usually becomes a big issue when it's done with intent, right? So the difference now between power and force compared to violence, power and force are actually quite neutral. We all have power, and force is actually what we do, how we direct our power, our energy. So, force is really just causing motion or change, it's activating your power, it's exerting it, and it's how much of that power you use and in which way you use it. So if you're using your force in a violent way and you're causing a violation, then that becomes an issue. But there are other ways you can use your power and force that are very beneficial, especially when we talk about developing your own personal boundaries and self defense. So, in nature, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. And there are always feedback mechanisms, even if we're not consciously aware of them, and they're happening all the time. For every force, there is a counter force. In any attempt to violate another, that use of force, that that type of exertion of power is always going to be confronted by pushback that matches the amount of force that has been exerted. And the reason for this is that in nature, everything tries to be in balance, in homeostasis. Your body, when it's in homeostasis, it's quite healthy. If it's tilted in one way or the other, then you actually become diseased instead of eased or in health or in homeostasis. So what happens now is somebody tries to exert a force in and to violate another, it is very natural that they will get pushback in some form or another. It may come directly from the person being violated, or it may come indirectly through others who are in connection with that. And everybody has the right to self-defense. And this is going to become important when we understand what boundaries are and standing in your sovereignty as well when you have your idea and you defend your idea. And there's ways to do this using your force and power. And you can use that to deflect, disarm, or disable an attempt to violate. So, say, for example, in a conversation, if somebody tries to say, well, no, you're wrong and I'm right, and you have to accept what I say, well, that's not really the case. And you don't have to back down. You can just say, well, I respect that you see things that way, but I would ask you to respect that I see things in this way. Or maybe we can recognize that we don't really see things very differently, but the way that we're trying to describe it is coming out differently and making it seem like there's more division when actually we have a lot more in common. So we'll respect different views. And again, we're not going to allow ourselves to be triggered, to have our triggered reactions control our responses. And they'll come up, they'll pop up, and you'll start to recognize them where you'll have an automatic response. And it might be emotional, it might be a programmed, automated reply that you want to say, but we won't jump on that. We'll just be curious about it and let it go so we can keep listening. And our first level of connection is going to always be our common humanity, our shared existence in this space and time. When we each share in our discussion, we share with our own authenticity. And at the same time, we don't expect anything from others. There's no forcing another to see things our way. And there's no competition for who's right and who's wrong. Every concept is worth exploring and questioning. The Buddha once said, and I'm summarizing this, but when I'm pointing to the moon, do not look at my finger, look to the moon. And what he is saying is, with his words, do not get trapped on the words and the phrases, but try to see what is actually being communicated. So, language is just one construct. And this one little construct we all use in our own way. And it would be silly to assume that we all hold the exact meaning for every word or phrase every time we employ them to convey a concept. If you can let that go and you're present in that moment with that person you're conversing with, you don't put anything into a box, you don't react with any triggers, you just are fully present, fully listening, fully receptive. You'll start to get the real essence of what that person is communicating to you on all the different levels. So, our third principle now is open-minded skepticism. And I'm going to show you the two opposite sides of this. And open-minded skepticism is really the middle ground. It's the Goldilocks area. So on one side, you can be very closed-minded. And an example of that would be if I approach you with an idea and I say, hey, I think let's go with something. We never, I don't think we ever landed on the moon, right? So your response, if you have a closed mind, would be, that's just crazy and stupid. There's no way things are like that. I don't want to waste my time considering it. And really what that's saying is, I know everything already on that, case closed. The other side would be too open-minded, where you'd be like, oh, really? Yes, okay, I totally agree with that. Oh, and you say that, and the um that all of this other stuff is happening too. Yes, yes, totally, I agree with that. But what's really happening when that's going on as well, the translation of that is, I don't want to examine it. I don't want to really look closely into this. So I'm just going to accept it all completely, even if your information contradicts with previous information that I have. I'm really not going to try to dig into that. And I'm going to push away my concern that certain things don't match up. So in both cases, it's interesting to note that what's happening is that the person who's closed minded and the person who's too open minded, they're both actually blinded by fear. In the one case where they're closed minded, it's the fear of being seen as ignorant because they've been conditioned to believe that everything's been figured out and you have to learn it. And once you learn it, you're very successful and there's a reputation involved. There's your personality, that persona the mask you show the rest of the world. And you hide behind that mask, but you don't want it to be cracked because if it's cracked, then you're vulnerable. Then you're fearful that people will reject you, that you'll be ostracized, that there will be pain and suffering in some way, shape, or form. And you want to push that away. And on the other hand, when you're too open minded, where you're just automatically accepting everything without examining it at all, and you're just believing what other people tell you, what you've done in that case is you've actually displaced your principal witness, which is yourself, and you're adopting everybody else's ideas. And that's the fear of being present. It's the fear of being right now in this moment and really paying attention, being intimate with it, because that fear as well is a fear of pain and suffering. And you're afraid that something may come up that you don't like, that you don't want to see, that maybe causes you to feel a certain way that you're not very comfortable with. So you want to push that away and push it away and hide. In both cases, it's not wanting to confront something that may come up that will cause some type of discomfort, some kind of pain and suffering. So, what we're going to do instead is practice open minded skepticism, where we don't automatically reject or accept anything. Every piece of data that we come across is going to be processed, and we're also going to remain our own principal witness, will remain in our power to decide for ourselves, to discern for ourselves, and we take full responsibility for how we are living our moment right now. It is ours and it's not given up to anybody else. And we're going to practice the true form of science, which is what we do all the time simply by living. That's our observation, where we have our intent, which comes from knowing ourselves and knowing how we want to live our lives. That intent will direct our focus, that tuning of all of our senses, like you're a radio dial, and you tune in so that you gather certain bits of data that are going around. And that data will be processed through your filters, which are your senses, and then it will play around with all the other bits of data that you've come across, coalescing, coming together, coming apart, finding what clicks and what doesn't, and all of this. And that will develop into theories, which are concepts and ideas, and will come to you as impressions and emotions and thoughts. And that will then lead to the experiment, which is the resulting action, the decision, the words spoken. And from that, you get feedback from your outer experience, from your inner environment. And that's a feedback loop, which starts the whole process over again with observing. So, with everything that we learn, this is what's going to be happening. Our free thinking course is all about challenging assumptions, exploring different perspectives, breaking through limits, boxes, and categories. And we're focusing on how thinking is not black and white. It's not even just simply nuance, but it's prismatic. So you may come across an answer to a question, but then what you'll realize is that question is multifaceted. And that answer, that one tiny answer, is also multifaceted. And that in itself is part of a bigger prism. And it just extends from there. And this is the fun of exploring life, exploring this experience, and finding out for yourself from your own perspective, what is it saying to you? What's your experience saying to you? Life is your teacher, and you can communicate with it. So, for the first 2 evenings in the week, we'll have our focus topics. We'll go through things like science, health. In health, we'll also go through some important aspects of medicine, and we've got freedom and human rights, which will also look at different types of laws. We've got arts, literature, language, math, psychology, philosophy, communication. All of these things they all connect to each other, and they can also go off in so many different branches. But what's really cool is that everything that we're going to learn about immediately applies to everybody's life. So it's not just some airy concept that we don't know why we're talking about it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's really going to challenge some concepts, but that's all right, because that's the whole point. We want to ask questions. We want to say, well, hey, maybe there's something I'm missing. Let me look and see. During the sessions, this is how it's going to work. We're going to have the first 30 minutes will be a video or a couple of videos, and or a guest speaker. And then the last half is going to be our open discussion about that new data that we've come across. And we're going to have small groups. So it'll be about 5 to 8 in each group. And the ages will be divided up depending on how large we are. If we're a very small group, then we can have them all mixed together during these sessions. And then our last day during the week, the third day, is going to be specifically focused on providing tools to face difficulties with confidence, grace, and resiliency. This is our Empathic Warrior Day. And this is all ages together. We'll have our first 30 minutes will be from videos and or a guest speaker. And the last half will be discussion about the tools that they've learned and any comments, anything at all that they want to talk about on that. Some examples of this can be physical self-defense principles, mental self-defense principles, breathing exercises, meditation techniques, emotional regulation techniques, just tools so if you as an individual, you're a kid, it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter what resources you have around you, you can come into yourself and you can handle in that moment whatever is going on. And you'll be empowered to do that without having to rely on anything or say, well, I can't do it because I don't have this or I don't have that. You can do it anytime, anywhere, no matter what. For parents, feel free to sit in on the sessions. This online course is going to be donation based. I haven't put a price on it. This is really meant as a tool for kids to get out of what's happening right now, get away from all the division, get away from all the public shaming, get away from all of the negativity, the depression, the anxiety, all of this stuff, so we can actually start to, feel fine being who we are without trying to conform to any image. So I was going to start using a tool called Big Blue Button. It's another type of virtual classroom, and the links for the parents will be emailed to them. You'll also be part of an email list that will receive any notifications of upcoming changes. Any changes will be at least 1 week in advance of occurring, so you can give me feedback. If you disagree with anything, let me know. If you decide to discontinue, that's perfectly fine. But you'll always know if there's any changes. The focus topics and any guest speakers are going to be included in the session descriptions. And all of that will be posted on my events page at goodfoodonearth.com. Um, and this is not going to be a school type of session. So there's not going to be any grades. There's not going to be any homework. There's not going to be any like scoring or keeping track of progress. This is really more of the older type of learning, the storytelling, the practical observing and reflection, all of that. And it's student guided. They're not even the students, but just it's everybody participating. They'll guide themselves whatever direction they end up going. Right. So as a review, the intention for our course with the focus topics, the goal of each of those sessions is to present an educational video or a guest speaker that will stoke questioning and challenging perception, strengthening each child's trust and capability to reflect, to analyze, to think critically, and to also find their focus on what matters for them and how new data can be applied to their reality. It's that taking of the data and transforming it into wisdom. Each discussion period is a practice of open, receptive listening, presenting their own perceptions with confidence, not worrying about contradicting views, but remaining curious, developing that open-minded skepticism, and developing good communication skills that respect themselves and their ideas, as well as the other person involved. There's no teacher here. We're all storytellers, and each person is the captain of their own ship. There will be no telling anyone what to think, but encouraging them to think for themselves and not to fear thinking differently. So the focus topics are going to be on Mondays and Wednesdays. I have a rough estimate of the times right now, and we'll see what the feedback is like. So when the groups are sizable enough, we'll have it divided into 3 different times. Each session is 1 hour long. Again, half an hour for the presentation and half an hour for discussion. And then on Fridays, we have all ages together for that 1 hour session on providing tools to face difficulties. So my website again is goodfoodonearth.com. You can visit the website for more resources for parents and educators. I have a page on there specifically called Solutions, Homeschooling, and so on for parents. And you can have a look at what's provided there. You can also visit the events page for the listings of each session. and visit the contact page for details on donations, how you can do that. I have it hooked up through PayPal. If you want to do e-transfer, that's fine too. And there's also alternative payment options. And you can use that contact page to send me a message if you don't already have my email. The starting date is going to be Monday, February 22nd, 2021. Anyone can join in at any time while this is ongoing, as long as we have space in the groups. That's no problem. So it's not like you have to have a certain start date. You can jump in whenever. And the ages, again, may be mixed if the groups are small. So you can find out more about me on the website, and it'll be on the menu. You can click on my story and get a bit more information about me. If you're also curious and want to have a Zoom call before you have your kids sign up for this, that's fine. Just contact me on the contact page and we can arrange to do that. So thank you very much. This presentation was provided for our orientation session, and we had a few questions and discussions, but that is it. So if you are interested, if you have any questions, if you want to arrange a Zoom call, you can go to my contact page, goodfoodonearth.com. And I'm really looking forward to providing this space. We've got ages 11 to 12, 13 to 14, 15 and up. We're going to be providing some incredible material from documentary clips, from animation studios, from science, some really awesome things, quantum physics, we got metaphysics. We're actually going to connect them up because you actually can connect up the things that are tangible and understandable with what seems to be not so understandable and seems to be wonky, but it actually isn't because we have it in science. So I'm looking forward to this, and uh, share this, like this. If you know anybody with kids who are interested, if your kids themselves want to start on their own, um, just let's do this. Let's take this action and get it off the ground. Thank you so much, guys.